Joining us now is Congressman Robert Garcia of California, ranking Democrat on the Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Congressman. I want to start there with ICE, the supercharged ICE with $170 billion coming their way. How are you thinking about, how are you preparing for what's to come with all of this money that ICE is getting?
I mean, not only was this bill obviously horrific for healthcare, for all the wealth that's being transferred, of course, to billionaires in this country. But a lot of folks don't realize that in this bill, you are supercharging this agency. Donald Trump is essentially creating a new super federal law enforcement agency through ICE. It's larger now, like you said, than the FBI. In fact, you could take all of the federal law enforcement agencies and combine them, and ICE is now going to be larger than all of those combined.
I mean, budget-wise or budget-wise?
Yeah, well, and personnel.
We're at some point, we will get more personnel, 10,000, I think, over the next 5 years.
We're going to double the size of ICE. And what's really, I think, scary about this moment is we know that most of the people that are being detained right now by ICE have no criminal record, have been convicted of absolutely nothing. It's U.S. citizens. It's protesters with doing their First Amendment rights. It's parents, it's families, it's grandparents. I just heard a story of a young man coming out of church back home in California, arrested, coming out of church, no criminal history, sent to a foreign country. These are the kinds of things that are happening. And people need to understand that Donald Trump, this is not just about immigration. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is obsessed with creating his own personal federal police force, and that's what he's doing here.
You know, the NPR, there's an NPR PBS Marist poll that came out on Tuesday on ICE enforcement of immigration laws, and you can see there on the screen, majority of the country, 54% of the country thinks that the administration is going too far, and yet he's still going at it full force, as we've been discussing. You are from California. You're a former mayor of Long Beach. Have you talk about the city just north of you, Los Angeles, where the president of the United States not only sent in ICE and the National Guard, but U.S. Marines. Do you know, are they still on the streets of Los Angeles? And if so, what are they doing?
Yeah, all of these forces that Donald Trump has sent in are still in and around L.A., and for no absolute reason. He is the one that created the sense of fear in the city of Los Angeles and more broadly. There were some protests, mostly peaceful, but at the end of the day, he wants to assert power. This is about him wanting to continue to have this authoritarian power. And we've got to push back on that. It's good to see so many people across the country, not just in polling, but on the streets, peacefully protesting what he's doing. And one other thing that's, I think, really important here is I don't think people realize how obsessed Donald Trump, and he always has been, with having his own agency at his control, because he knows that he can't control local police agencies. Most local big city police agencies have said, we're not going to actually work with you. Our job is not federal law enforcement, which it isn't. Their job is to do traffic tickets, to respond to 911 calls. That bothers him and Stephen Miller to their core. So he's creating his own national police force.
You know, one of the things that people often think about is like Democrats hate that Donald Trump is doing this, right? That maybe some independents, but also a lot of Republicans, right, have issues and concerns with how this is shaping up. You have 6 California state Republican lawmakers in a letter that came out on June 27th urging him to focus his ICE detentions on violent criminals. Quote, "We urge you to direct ICE and DHS to focus their enforcement operations on criminal immigrants and, when possible, to avoid the kinds of sweeping raids that instill fear and disrupt the workplace." He is not listening to Democrats, obviously. Do you have any indication that at any point he will listen to Republicans who are worried about this? Because he listened for a little bit to these business folks who are like, stay away from the farms, and then they backtracked on that.
I don't. I think Stephen Miller, who's probably one of the most
Deputy White House Chief of Staff,
and
who focuses on this,
and quite frankly, the co-president to Donald Trump. I mean, this is the person driving all of the domestic policy agenda. He has an obsession with immigrants and those of us that came here to actually work to make this country a better place. And I think what's interesting about what you said is I don't think they care about the chaos and the harm and the terror that they're causing.
They like it. They think it scares people to self-deport.
That's right. And at the same time, I'm hearing from a lot of folks across the country that voted for Donald Trump that are saying, wait, this is not what I voted for. This is betrayal. This is actually something that goes against what I believe in. And I know someone that's gotten picked up. And why is he picking up folks that are U.S. citizens or that I know and have done nothing wrong in this country. And so I think people are waking up across this country realizing that, oh, wait, Donald Trump could care less about the cost of goods. He cares about deportation. He cares about taking away people's health care. And what he really cares about is ensuring that his billionaire friends and donors are happy with him.
We've failed to say congratulations, Mr. Ranking Member of the House Oversight Committee. That now puts you in the leadership of the Democratic caucus. And so I guess now that the so-called bad-built Butch bill.
Almost got it.
I almost got it. That is now the law of the land. You know, I keep quoting the Washington Post Ipsos poll that shows that more than 60% of the American people, 60% of the people polled knew little or nothing about what is now the law of the land. How are Democrats going to close that gap so that it goes from them not knowing a whole lot and thinking that these no tax on tips and no tax on car loans and all these other things that are front loaded, that they're going to get hammered on the back end later on after the midterm elections with these cuts to Medicaid? How are Democrats going to make sure that the American people know what's in this bill, and how are you going to do that consistently?
Well, I think first we have to ensure that as a party that we are communicating in every single medium and channel out there. And that is digital spaces. That is where people are consuming their information, which we know is more and more on their phones. Mm-hmm. That's on places where people are getting their news, not just, of course, here, but on places like YouTube and others. And so we have to ensure that we are getting our message across everywhere and be relentless about it. As we go into these next few weeks of the fall, Democrats have to be out in every congressional district, town halls, and if there's a Republican, we're hosting town halls in that district as well. And we've got to be visible and ensure that we have all of our voices at the party at the table. Look, I'm very grateful, obviously, to have been elected to this role in the Oversight Committee and to lead the committee. What I think is really important about this moment and what you're seeing here and other places is we need to bring the next generation of folks from our party to the table, expand the tent, and ensure that we have communicators out there driving this message home. Because we're seeing what's happening in places across the country, what happened in New York and other places. If the message can actually hit people if we're communicating it in the right spaces.
You know, in your role, you also work closely with James Comer, who's the chair of the Oversight Committee. He has Ron Klain and other former aides from the Biden side scheduled to testify because they are probing, in their words, Biden's mental acuity. Now, in the time that they're spending focused on the former president and their issues with whatever,
Congressman Robert Garcia remarks offer a sobering and fiercely critical portrait of what he calls the supercharged AAC under Donald Trump leadership. At the heart is his concern is the staging $170 billion allocated to Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ASC), which he describes as an effort to create a personal national police force larger than the FBI and other federal agencies combined. Garcia warns that this explosion is not about CDP or law enforcement, but about authoritarian power. He accused Trump of intentionally building of systems to sidestep local policy, many of whom refuse to cooperate with ACA. This federalized force, he argues, is sweeping up not just undocumented immigrants, but citizens, protesters, and families often with no criminal records. Garcia cites examples of U.S. citizens and churchgoers being detained and deported. For him, this is not immigration enforcement, it's political intimidation and racial profiling. Even some Republicans are showing discomfort. 6 GOP lawmakers from California recently argued Trump to narrow ACE's scope to violent criminals, not mass workplace raids. Garcia, however, is skeptical Trump or his advisor Stephen Miller will listen. In his view, they are motivated not by policy, but by a nativist obsession with immigrants and political control through fear. As ranking Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, Garcia emphasizes another critical point: public ignorance of the bill's contents. Despite its massive implications, slashed Medicare tax cuts for billionaires, work requirements for welfare, over 60% of Americans don't know what they need. According to a Washington Post AP COC poll, Garcia flames weak Democrats' messaging and vows to change that throws aggressive outrage in digital media, YouTube, and town halls, even in Republican districts. He also criticizes Republicans for prioritizing Biden's mental fitness over the real stress, claiming healthcare, rising costs, and corruption within Trump orbit. Garcia even points to settlements like Paramount is $16 million with payout to Trump is seen of a powerful institution born to intimidation, and Arizona of democracy and accountability. Garcia's warning is clear. Trump isn't just seeking re-election, he is building an infrastructure for control. AOC is not longer just an energy, it's the foundation of Trump's surveilled state, and Democrats must explode it before it's too late.